This conference will now be recorded.
Thank you.
Okay, Mary Benton,
Yes. Okay.
Lloyd Colston. He's on call. Yeah. But he is here. Paisley Howerton,
Here.
Charles Jennings. Yes. Ian Kuhn. Here. Andy Patton. Here. And Cody Richardson. Here.
Okay.
Why is Joni's not named out on my list?
It is not on that list.
I don't know what I did. But she's not here, she says.
Okay, public comments. Not sold here, so we'll pass by that. Moving on to consent agenda, meeting minutes. We all got an email that had last month's meeting minutes. Anybody see anything that needed to be adjusted in that? If not, I will entertain a motion to approve the August 10th, 2020 minutes. Thank you. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you. Any other discussion? No discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Thank you. All right, comprehensive plan. John, hand it over to you.
Well, I had hoped to have more people here. We do have one on the call. So David Brazel with the Community Health Center. So I think it's probably would be a good idea to do him. We had reached out to mental health providers, first responders. See they're here. But I know that was one of the things we wanted to talk about a little bit more was our mental health in the community. We might just have to push more discussion about, I don't know. But I would suggest that we just have David Brazel, if he wants to tell us a little bit about what they're wanting to do. David, can you hear us?
Yes. How about you?
We can hear you.
All right. Well, I'm just looking at the section on community health and comprehensive planning. Think it's strong. Pleased to see that we're putting community health and the built environment together. As I went back through the section, did note the updated community health improvement plan. Had our first needs assessment meeting, and then the implementation meeting will come here in the next couple of weeks. And the new priorities, behavioral and mental health still rank 1, poverty 2, drug substance abuse 3, suicide 4, and awareness of healthcare services as number 5. You've got reference to the community health improvement plan or the community health needs assessment in here. Just think that's excellent. We have prioritized establishing a second clinic in Arkansas City. A lot of that is grant and fund dependent. At some point, when the opportunity's there and we're able to get the designation, want to be able to serve Arkansas City, including the underserved consumers. Right now, we've been looking at the Lincoln School property. It would convert very, very well and allow for future expansion. And we have applied for some funding to be able to pursue that property. But until we hear word, we're kind of in a holding pattern.
Okay.
Any questions? Any questions of me?
The only question I was going to ask was about what the status of acquiring Lincoln School is, and you answered that already. So,
yeah, I would expect to hear something if that designation and funding gets awarded before the end of October, and then we'll start down the path of trying to acquire the property. Now, for us, the priority is to locate near the most underserved consumers, whether that be low-income housing or in a neighborhood within walking distance of those priority patients.
We did get some feedback. Rags, who was here at the last meeting, had read through it and gave some feedback. And one of the things that she said she felt that was lacking in this community was some sort of a health care provider in the South Park town. This would be perfect for that. And we told her that this was in the works. So that's something needed.
We'd be more than happy to submit a statement with our model and mission and vision.
Okay.
That would fit in here very well.
Yes,
Yeah, absolutely, yeah.
Does he have it memorized? You have it memorized? Can you?
Forgive me.
I thought he might share it with us audibly here. That's okay. All right, thank you.
Okay, thank you, David.
Thank you.
Honestly, other than that, since I don't have any more people to talk to us,
I'm sorry, I don't pardon my ignorance, but who is this guy again?
he's with the Community Health Care Center. It's right now it's based in Wakefield. But there, it's basically it's a low income.
What's called a federally qualified healthcare.
Yeah.
So they can handle patients without insurance and that kind of thing.
They attempted to purchase the Lincoln School and it fell through the first time they didn't get their grant that they were pretty sure they were going to get, I thought. And so this is at least try number 2 on that.
And the school district is still very interested.
Yeah, the school is, they agreed to fill Zoom once, so I can't imagine they're going to back out.
Yeah, they, and while they don't know what else to do.
Right.
Anyway.
That's a nice building.
Yeah, it's got good bones. I haven't been inside it.
Excellent.
It needs some work.
Now, are they talking just general healthcare or are we talking mental?
Looks like a doctor's, regular doctor's office.
I think they probably provide some,
Well, I was kind of asking around, I heard some comments from people saying it's very hard to get mental health care here. Like physical, that difficult. Mental is real hard. A lot of therapists or types of people in that position, the ones that were overbooked pretty much. So,
Fort County is an asset. I've been a part of it before. But yeah, there's not a whole lot of providers out there. And they're, I kind of hope to hear from them tonight for that reason.
Yeah.
See what it's like, see if we need more providers, if we need to try to recruit some more. And
Our county health director last month basically said, yes, we need more. But that was without having anybody here from Fort County, so.
Do you mind if I jump back in?
Absolutely.
You know, the last 2 cycles of the community health needs assessment had behavioral health and mental health services ranked very high. Last time it was number 1. This time it's going to be number 1, and that's a combination of services and some of the recent issues with suicide. We have been integrating behavioral health into primary care for about 4 years now and have partnered with Fort County Mental Health. We do brief interventions, and if they're more significant, then go to them. And what I can say market-wise is it is very difficult to recruit some of the licensed providers.
Do you have any ideas that we could help with that process, the city?
Not right offhand. I do expect some legislative solutions in the next cycle that may give us, for example, right now we rely at the health center and the integrated care on licensed clinical social workers. They're about as difficult to recruit as a physician.
Wow.
But I know the needs are high in the community, and especially with the CAP project that South Central is doing, there's a lot of different agencies coming together to try to address the broader behavioral health, mental health issues and normalize that care.
Okay. Thank you, David.
Yeah.
Anything else on this, Josh?
But I don't have anything else right now. I do want to make sure you're aware, though, of the Cali, what's the name of the suicide prevention group? I can't remember. There's a well-established suicide prevention group that's been established in the county.
Well, there's, what he talked about CAP, that's the Cali Awareness Project,
Too.
which is working, I think, on mental health, but then there's also the Suicide Prevention of Cali County Coalition. And that's what Mayor Burr's working with. I think they're trying to sort of not merge those, but kind of get them under one umbrella. So they're coordinating. I don't know the details, but I've heard chatter in that regard. But it's being worked on, and a bunch of these different providers are working together on it. It's just,
Yeah.
it's not an easy issue, and there's not a lot of funding out there.
Right.
So with that, I guess we can go ahead and move on to infrastructure and transportation.
Yep.
Tonight, I think definitely this needs to be split into two. In fact, we might even split this into two chapters.
Infrastructure and transportation.
Yeah. But tonight, I just want to focus on the infrastructures. And when I say infrastructure, I'm talking about utilities primarily.
Yeah.
So in this chapter, of course, one of the main things that comes out in infrastructure is your water and your sewer. So the primary ones the city actually has control over. Of course, since this plan was written, this building was built. So the city has done some major enhancements to our water system since then. Not done as many water line rehabilitations as we would like, but part of that has to do with funding sources and stuff. We did most recently just was working on the Grand Meat and the Highland Drive site neighborhood. That's the most recent major project. However, there's also been a lot of work along Summit Street, a couple of projects that were done. Other than that, it's all about repairing main breaks as they happen. But it's mostly about funding, honestly. That's the biggest thing. And we've got a pretty good water fund, the city does. But generally, we need something to go along with it in order to make a project actually go. Some grants or something. We've so far not been successful getting a CDBG grant.
You can give up on that.
We can go on that
Just gave up on how,
because we
Just go for streets.
did it 3 times.
and just,
Tried
It's always
for
something.
Brad Meek, and they just gone through us. We tried it for Sleeth.
They told us that we didn't have enough people that would be affected by that. And then there was another one.
That one, 817 short on the scoring. It was like right under the cutoff. Very frustrating. Which, too bad. Sleeth probably is one that we need to keep on there because it's a cohesive area that we've done. But the three, the Brad Mead, Highland, Hillside, and the Crestwood one, those are the three biggest by far redwater areas. That's why they were selected.
Yeah.
As part of that 2 million. And I don't know where, I was hoping Rod would be here. I will try to get him here because I think he's the guy to talk about this stuff. But I don't think there's any other major concentrated areas where they're having red water. It's more like spots. So it'll probably be less overhaul in the neighborhood and more piecemeal.
Yeah.
Going forward, but there may be some stuff that pops up. One thing they are working on right now is a water master plan, which I assume it's done, might incorporate into this. So they're doing water modeling, to kind of look at the system as a whole, figure out where they might need to do more and do more circulation. I know they've had some issues at Lakeview Estates. They're having like bad chlorine residuals and it's brand new pipe.
Yeah.
And it's got problems. So it's not just an issue with the age of the pipes. A lot of times it has to do with if the water's sitting stagnant,
Yeah.
it's not getting enough flow and some of that kind of stuff. So
There's not a lot of users in that area either.
yeah, so they just improved that
Yeah.
recently. And then also the north pressure zone upgrades. I think this is part of that. I think the data from this will feed into that. So they're doing major overhauls of all the pump equipment at the Bryant station.
Yeah.
Knowing that Creekstone's is going to keep expanding and we have to continue to drive more pressure that way. I think he said they've got the standpipe east of the river still on the radar. And they're still thinking they'll need to do a pump station up overhaul and replace the Chestnut booster with, I don't know if they're still thinking about one on Madison or not. Okay, they got the line is all the way to the river on the east side. So it'd be a pretty simple matter to just bore under and continue on and that. So those are there, but it's slightly lower priority. And then I think Rod said something about maybe you might need another storage tower at the north end of town, past Creekstone, even on top of the one that's already out off, depending on what this plan finds. So.
If there continues to be development of housing out there, that could.
Right,
definitely-
so there's still definitely, needs that, I mean, this is the big one, obviously, that we're, and they're continuing to do well rehabilitation, so they'll, I think we're right on that. I think we've got one going in, one with a generator.
Just every year we do.
The off year is
Right.
the drilling and the all permitting and everything, so basically everything you're getting well. But with this one, they should have 2 generators and 3 on a generator, and they'll be able to put one early once this one's installed.
Yeah.
And that'll take care of a lot of pumping capacity, plus the water rights.
And of course, that building is also on generators, so if we were ever to lose power, we won't lose our water.
And we've got a 1.5 million gallon clear well there too.
So we've been in good shape for a while. So we'll get this section updated, this in this chapter, because obviously it's out of date. But basically, we just want to talk about what we're doing.
And I did mention in the invite, I don't know if I saw it, but if you guys would like to take a tour of the process area of the plant, we can arrange that. I was thinking, maybe if you want to come early, maybe the next meeting, it might be easier to try to do it during the meeting, but it's up to you guys.
Yeah, but
It's been completed. I was in there, over, but I'm gonna try to do that.
that's just plan.
I'll make sure Rod and Mike.
Yep.
And that would encourage them to be here for the.
Yeah, and I would like to hear from Rob, yes.
Yep, nobody's voted though.
What he went through when we got there.
Oh, that's funny. Okay, well, moving on to sewer. Sort of the same thing, now this is a little bit different because our plant is aging. It has some issues, but the city commission recently approved some plans to do some upgrades at the plant. So your sewer rates are going to be going up pretty soon. But that can be financed primarily through those rates without having to do a whole lot of extra stuff. Like we don't have to have a special grant. I think we are using the state revolving, is that correct? The revolving loan fund.
I believe that's the intention.
So we are getting a loan for it.
Well, they're also going to use, so we got like 1.4, 1.6 million in the ARPA, American Recovery Plan funding.
Oh, that's right.
They're going to use for wastewater. Yeah. So I think they're wanting to do the admin building with available funds from the sewer fund, I think. I think they're going to talk about getting bids on that here pretty soon. And then using ARPA to kind of down pay or knock down some of the borrow amount, but it's probably still being in excess of 10 million. That has to be borrowed. and all.
But the fees should make payments.
Yeah,
Cover the debt service.
right, and then the interest rate right now is like 1.24 or something ridiculous. I mean, they're never gonna get a better rate, 20-year financing. So.
As the KDHE come out with the standards for the wastewater, that they're,
No, it's changed like 3 or 4 times in the last 3 months.
okay, that's what I've asked. I've asked several of our commissioners, and I've never got a straight answer to that.
They ask, I've been in the meeting, they'll ask Daniel, who's their underwriter, and he'll tell them, this is what we heard this week, and then a new email will come and it changes again. And it sounds like it's literally people at KDHE that just keep changing their mind.
Yeah.
Then the EPA changed their mind. But from what he said the last commission meeting, what they're proceeding with will handle what we know is coming in the next permanent cycle, which is in a couple of years, which is nitrogen and phosphorus. One of the
Phosphorus, I believe is what it is.
And then they're doing what they're doing in a modular way, in a way that they won't have to tear out a bunch of this new stuff and redo it if something comes out of the pipe. They'll be able to add on, accommodate it. But without knowing what it's going to be, they can't go real far down that line. The big thing though is the safety improvements, because they've just got unsafe wiring and conditions down there. And
That's been going on for a long time.
no, it's long overdue, all that admin process stuff is. So it's kind of more of a phased approach.
Some of the stuff down there's, 60+ years old.
Yeah, I don't think any of that motor control stuff's probably already been touched since it was installed.
Maybe 70.
It's honestly a wonder we haven't.
That's why we reuse as much.
Yeah, no, Tommy's done an amazing job of limping everything along.
He's also not
I got guys retired now, and same with Rod and Mike, honestly.
Yeah.
You gotta move forward with this. So I think they finally got to a point where they're pretty comfortable, but man, I agree, it took months, and we went through 3 or 4 iterations of that.
Yeah.
There was a big pie in the sky kind of proposal, and I knew they had a 3 or 4 hour meeting. Some of the commissioners and Burns and back, and they took a blowtorch to a whole bunch of it.
Like, the first proposal I saw was like $40 million or something.
Yeah, the main one they were looking at, and they cut that up, was about 25. I mean, we paid for this.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we're gonna, we're not gonna go from scratch. Right. Well,
Yeah.
They're in the business of selling.
Right.
They're gonna, we all want a Ferrari. Yeah,
Yeah.
well, I'm gonna think Cadillac, but they're
I'd be happy with the ship. Okay.
not as expensive as they used to be. So.
Anyway, that's something that's definitely going to be worked on, and might be the reduction of smell too.
Has there been any talk about the sewer lines themselves? I mean, I know they did some repairs and stuff.
Yeah, I think we're still trying to do the project downtown.
Yeah, I see a lot of potholes in the alleys. I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, I don't know where that's at. I thought AT&T was kind of done with the relocation, but they're still
here.
I still in charge.
because they're doing the other work for Matt, so it's always hard to tell what they're working on. But I believe that is still in the plans for later this year to get them on.
We need them out of the picture, of course, before we.
Yeah, that's held up for almost a year now.
It's like that job. Those guys have been in those sewers all summer.
Oh, yeah.
Oh,
It's kind of like the big bike trail. As soon as there's lots of projects that get stuck in a holding pattern because the utility companies don't get done what they need to do.
But the good thing is they are also, that kind of switches this next section. AT&T in particular, well, and Cox are constantly doing upgrades. Same thing with Kansas Gas. And I mean, well, I get a thing from Kansas Gas to do a block of an alley about every other month, where they're tearing out their old bare steel lines and replacing it with the plastic lines that are obviously a little bit better.
Yeah.
That's likely to grow, and that's likely to have problems where we lose our services. So they're all very good at doing that too. I know that Cody is on the line for Cox. Cody, did you have anything that you wanted to say about your company?
No. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Yeah. So really nothing from what we discussed last time when Megan was on has changed. Just so you guys know, we are going through a significant upgrade, where we're upgrading all the equipment. We're not necessarily upgrading the actual plant mileage, but a lot of the equipment involved in it, including equipment in our head-end facilities. So that'll actually increase a lot of our speeds. Like we have a goal to dramatically increase speeds by a certain year. It's not really my department, but I just know that upgrade's going on. And then right now we just have a lot of BAU stuff going, stuff where we're modifying our facilities on Evergy's request, or also the technician down there that lives in Arc City. He's very involved in making everything better. So he's continually sending us requests to replace poles or just clean up all of our services down there. So that's really all I have. I mean, do you guys have questions for me? Hopefully I can answer them, or if not, I can get you to the person that can answer the question.
I don't think I have any questions for Cox. Anybody else?
Thanks for being on the call, Cody.
Yeah, no problem. Yep. And like I said, if you guys have any questions, Josh, I know you got my email, and Andrew, you do as well. If you guys have any questions, just reach out and I'll either have an answer for you or definitely get you in the right direction. So, and we definitely enjoy, I've got a direct report that manages all the, any of the BAU stuff that we have going on in Arc City, and he does a really good job for me, and I actually enjoy going down to Cali County on occasion from Wichita just to tool around. I went to college there in Southwestern, so I'm very familiar with the area. So I like going back every now and then.
Okay. Thank you, Cody.
Thanks.
On the sanitary sewers, I just want to throw this out there that they've made great strides in trenchless repairs, where they're way cheaper and a lot less intrusive. You're not going to be worried about other utilities or tearing up the roads, brick roads, and all that stuff. So when it comes time to repair these, that might be something we as a city should look into.
Anytime we don't have to actually tear up the street, that's the thing.
Yeah.
That's a big part of the cost of repairing.
Exactly. It's not just the digging, it's all the street repairs, and sidewalks, and all that stuff.
We're just moving right on, huh? Stormwater management. The stormwater is, of course, a little bit different kind of utility than the others. But it still is a utility. We have quite a bit of stormwater that is in pipe. Of course, we have a large system of inlets and outlets and canals. And what sometimes doesn't get included in stormwater management is the levees. So floodplain control is also a big part of stormwater management. One of the things that the city has been struggling with is funding. Right now, a residential customer pays $3 a month, which is probably adequate. But all of our commercial customers, everyone from the storefront down on Summit all the way up to Creekstone, pays $6 a month, no matter what. And so that is something that the city manager has asked me to look into. We've looked at some other cities and how they handle that. And one of the things that is common is you look at how much impervious area a commercial development has. And what we did was we looked at how much impervious area the average household has. And then what you do is you call that one forget what the term was. It's basically one unit. And then you look at a commercial and you see how many of those units that they have. So if they have like twice as much impervious area as the average home, then they would pay twice as much as a residential customer. All the way up to our largest users that might be a couple hundred times. Now, obviously, some of them have put in a lot of work to reduce their effect on our system.
How did it eventually it all goes to the canals?
Yeah.
Even if they have retention.
Even if they do, but it's not about the volume of water that we look at, it's about the flow
Yeah.
and quality.
Right, managing that flow.
Because part of the mandate we were talking about that we're having to fix with our sewer plant has to do with the quality of what's in the river. But what's funny is we've discovered that our sewer plant actually dilutes the river because of the quality of water that comes out of it compared to what's already in the river.
Yeah, I've heard Rod say this before, that the water coming into Arc City is so much worse than once if you measure it past Arc City. Not just output from our wastewater plant, but Creekstone has our own wastewater plant that's producing, better water than river water.
Yes.
And so that volume of water has diluted it so much that it's much, much better what's leaving Arc City than what we get.
Most of that, and part of the problem is, and we're going to get political with this, but part of the issue is that agricultural uses are not regulated.
Right.
They don't have to do anything to treat their water. I come from a farming family. It would kill us if we had to do something like that. So in the state of Kansas, that's not likely to change anytime soon. And so what that means is that we have to, as a city, not only do the sewer, but we also have to ensure that the quality of the water that's going out through our floodgates is also improved from what it just comes and drops on the ground. So for us, that's going to be a lot of what happens on the streets. There's not a whole lot we can do about what happens with that. And so we ask that the big users of our stormwater, which is our large commercial properties, do little things to mitigate that. And so one of the things with the proposal and what some other cities have done is if you do certain things to improve water quality, stormwater quality, and obviously the flow, that you would get an exemption from part of that. Some cities that I've looked at around the country, because it's not just in Kansas, give you like up to 50% of your credits of your units back, so you're paying a reduced fee because of all the work. You could go as high as 100%, where they're not paying any fees at all. But I think it's probably not fair to raise the rates on all of our residential customers without doing something on the commercial side.
Absolutely.
Especially if sewer rates are already going up.
Yes.
It'll be a tough thing.
It would absolutely be. And I don't know about you all, but my combined bill is already significant. And
The commercial business isn't going to feel that as much as the single person.
we also don't want to be charging a Creekstone $10,000 a month for it either.
Yeah.
So we have to draw the line because we don't want to discourage what they're doing either. But I think even they would be willing to pay more than $6 a month.
But even though they made spend a significant amount of money on their own stormwater detention pond and things like that.
Now, that is the thing. We still, at this point, I still require it for new development, well, not even just new, if it's a major expansion to a commercial development, they have to do stormwater detention of some sort. Even the smaller, like McDonald's, when they redid theirs, they didn't have any kind of stormwater retention at the old site. Now they have, it's not a very big thing, but they do have one, plus they own that whole lot going all the way back behind Wendy's and Sherwin Williams and all that, so they have a little bit of overflow if that ever happened as well. So it's something we're still working on, but sometimes with these smaller projects, it doesn't make a whole lot of sense for them to do very much. And so by changing to this model where they just pay a higher fee, a lot of them would be just fine with that.
Right.
Anytime we have like a new development coming, like Fuller King, for example, we'll pick on them since they've come back. We were talking to them about how in the world they could do something with stormwater, and it was complicated because they didn't have a whole lot of options. But one of the things they talked about doing was underground tank. It would actually flow into a tank, and once it got to a certain level, it would overflow.
How does what we charge for stormwater management, how does that compare to other cities, Kansas, or other rates?
The current system is pretty low. I'd have to look at what others are doing that don't have a system like this. Equivalent residential unit, I remember what it was called.
Yeah.
I'm sure there's plenty of cities that do not follow a system like that, and they're just a flat rate, just like we are.
Yeah.
And it's something we need to do some research on to see what, I could honestly couldn't answer that question.
That would make it much more palatable.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Send it up to these commercial businesses and go, hey, here's the deal, what's going on? This is why.
And what we would do before that ever happened was we would probably present them with, this is the number of units you have. This is what your bill would probably be. What do you think? Is this something that you can handle?
Yeah.
One of the
Even if you,
groups we did, we actually wanted to do stakeholder meetings.
even if you triple it, it's still $18.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think that seems pretty fair.
And that would go a long ways,
Especially considering
problems.
Those residential equivalent drainage units or whatever they are. Most of the parking lots stuff, even all that stuff is straight to the storm drainage system. Residential homes have mainly yards, absorb some water.
Well, we could probably look into some of the creative stuff that residential does, like rain barrels and that kind of stuff too. We don't have funding right now that would allow us to get rebates and stuff for stuff like that, so we can't encourage it. And then the biggest expense right now, other than just dealing with our current drainage in like on the streets, is the levee. We have to do regular inspections of the thing to make sure that it maintains its irrigation. Those are not cheap. Several $100,000 is what we need to invest right now just to get through the whole process. We don't want to lose certification, because if you lose certification, you lose your floodplain insurance.
Right.
So for the people that are required to have floodplain insurance, they're in trouble.
So
If we don't.
it's just to give you guys an idea of how inadequate the stormwater are. We're trying to finalize the Wilson Park Phase 1 contract construction, and folks Park is going to come in and do a bunch of stormwater work. They're going to lay a bunch of concrete pipe for us. They're going to do a bunch of, they're going to clean up all the issues of Wilson Park where you see the standing water and ponding and all that, and it's going to be a lot better. Well, we've taken a pencil estimate several times, we've worked with them, we've taken on more stuff in-house, try to get that number down, because we're really trying to keep this whole thing under about 500,000. And it's coming in about 25,000 over at the moment, so we're still kind of trying to figure out some other sources. But one of the things that was proposed, which I thought was a great idea, was let's use stormwater fund money for the stormwater portion of the improvements, because it is actually stormwater work. 25,000, we don't have enough. Wow. That's how woefully inadequate this one is. So imagine if we had to try to do a $250,000 to $300,000 levy certification out of that. There's no way.
Yeah.
So this is long overdue.
Wow.
It's got to happen.
Yeah.
Just to be able to do routine maintenance, much less major capital items. So
Right.
that's definitely, I thought for sure. I was like, oh, that would be as much, right? Sure.
I thought I would have.
That's the only fund we don't transfer out of to general or others at the end of the year. We transfer out of water, we transfer out of a little bit out of sanitation, we transfer out of sewer. We don't touch stormwater because it's already not enough money.
Wow. I had no idea.
So how would you rate the health of our stormwater system compared to things like?
What we can see, I think, is pretty good. I mean, there can always be a little better maintenance on the canals and stuff, but I think Mike Crandall has done a lot of good for us since he's gotten here because he understands from being down in Florida, Louisiana, how important that stuff is. He makes it a priority to stay on the guys about that. So I think that's gone better. I think the levee mowing and maintenance is very well. I think that was shown in 2019. Everything held up really good. We do have some pump area issues. We've got, oh man, I'm trying to think now. That's what we had mentioned on sewer. We got a bunch of lift stations that we have in the capital plan to slowly replace that time. Many of them are still fairly recent. There are some pumping stations. So obviously Lincoln and 6th Street is that's a huge area problem down there. We need to look at, because the screens will get gunked up. So a lot of our stormwater problem isn't so much what we're doing, it's what residents are doing. You know, when they blow their grass out in the gutters, that's all getting trapped in the pump, or it's going down, getting trapped in the screens on the mill canal.
Or the underpasses.
There is, but I mean,
It's hard to afford stream environment.
yes. Some drug education, you know, we just had,
Street sweepers a little
Yeah.
more.
yeah, that's part of it. They do try to run those. We did have some sanitation or some stormwater education in the last water bill. We got stuff online, there's a video. We're trying to figure out some other ways. There's a whole new, this thick federal plan that Mike's gonna do for our stormwater permit. And we can get points on a bunch of different things. So we're kind of ramping up some volunteer activities and trying to do some other things. To kind of get people to understand that, you know, you think you're just dumping it, it's not your problem anymore, but it's somebody's problem. It's
Just one thing about the grass being blown in the street, maybe some education could help, because that's something that has to be reported by neighbor to city services, so they can come and.
Yeah, we're trying to work on the kids, because I think if we can get the kids to understand it,
Yeah.
then they can kind of educate the parents a little bit too about
Yeah.
that sort of thing. So we're working on some stuff with the schools. But to get back to your question, that's good. I think what our worry is we don't know what the pipes look like under the ground. So a great example of that's what just happened up on Washington. That was a stormwater culvert that utterly, it was a metal corrugated one that just collapsed and it took out the whole street.
Yeah.
How much more of that is under there that we don't know about till it fails? That's probably the biggest.
That's why I was asking, the rainwater is extremely destructive.
Yes.
It's important that we keep that stuff maintained.
Yes, and so we got a mixture of concrete and steel and who knows what all.
Well, the good thing too is we have technology where we use to clean out our sewer mains. That can also be used on stormwater too.
Instead of robotic getting down,
They can do that.
what the cause of the collapse was before they started ripping up the whole street bed. But that kind of stuff, I think probably keeps guys like Mike up at night, because if one of those goes, it just, where's the money coming from?
Yeah.
True. But we do try to stay on top of the levee and the canals. I want to say there's a major canal. No canal's got something on the CIP, like a screen replacement. And of course, those pumps, we put some money into at the mill canal. We were looking at one point about putting in new pumps. You remember those old discussion, we were able to get refurbished. Those are really old pumps.
Like 100-year-old.
Yes, they're still working.
Yeah.
Those are insanely important when we've got the flooding out, because we still got to get rainwater out. It goes over.
And then what we discovered in 2019 is we probably need more pumps, because we had to manually pump water along the south part of the canal at Rattleton Street. And well, I think we lose power or something at one point, had to do it manually there too.
There's been some talk, I think, of getting some of the more portable ones and just having them stored, because
For those emergencies.
I know we got to deploy one at ADM almost all the way. I think ADM actually has one.
They have their own.
Because I think we got some FEMA out on that. We got a loaner or something, but you can't always rely on that. So.
Well, it depends how,
Yeah, how many communities are flooded is gonna. Yeah, there's definitely lots to take care of, but on the whole, I think it's a lot better than it was 5 years ago, just from Mike coming in and making them priority.
That's an area of expertise that he has. That
It seems better. I can see there's any washouts. See a lot of the culverts washed out.
And Bob Frazier's a big part of that too, because he's always on the levees, checking for damage, you know, and full, tearing up the toe of it. He's real good about pointing out things, and making sure Terry's guys stay on top of stuff too.
But there's one other issue that I see with stormwater. It's a cross contamination. That's where your stormwater goes in the sewer system.
yes.
Have we done any studies on that?
Well, see, that's something about the sewer plant too, because what's happening is we're getting all this infiltration. And so we are treating stormwater. We're not supposed to treat stormwater.
Yeah.
That just puts more pressure. Whereas
Aren't there some areas where the stormwater just goes directly into? There's some areas in town where it's built out. So, yeah, that's an issue.
Yeah, I mean, I would address that stuff. That's probably the easiest fix, to take some pressure off it.
Well, we found when we went downtown, when we were doing a smoke test on the sewer line, we had all sorts of problems with smoke coming up into people's buildings. It wasn't because of the sewer.
That's what I said, the end user.
It was because they had took their sewer, their storm drains.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're
And it's probably been connected to that thing for 100 years. The
Yeah.
current occupant knows like that.
Right.
But yeah, that's the kind of thing.
And the gutters, that's right, I had heard about, there's a lot of gutters in the downtown buildings that went right into the sewer. That's right.
And so when that line gets replaced, those will be up.
That's one way to fix it.
Why am I getting water backing up into my basement?
Yeah.
Protect the sanitary sewer line.
Like I said, that's what he's, I mean, all you do is disconnect. Off the street.
Yeah, I forgot about that.
I don't know what I used to. It's not the roof drains, it's the drains that they have like in the basement or something, where the sump pump drains into or whatever. That's what we're seeing. So it's stuff that we can't see.
Well, so technically that is stormwater. So it's
Yes.
okay. Or I mean, I'm sorry, not to go with sanitary. Fine. Yeah, that would be good.
Are we gonna start on transportation or?
Well, there was one other that's obviously, it's kind of a utility that's not really talked about. I don't think anywhere in the plan, which is kind of odd. Maybe it is somewhere, but I just kind of, but I'm talking about the sanitation. Picking up of the trash. But the funny thing is, I don't think it's covered specifically in here. That's it's kind of infrastructure, it's kind of transportation.
Yeah.
And it has a similar funding structure that the water and sewer and stormwater has.
Since the city provides that, I think it probably should be in the infrastructure section.
I think we probably should put that in there.
Something about it.
But we have, of course, we switched out to the polycar system 7, 8 years ago now. It's been forever now. Which I think has really helped the crews. It was a royal pain to get it implemented. I remember when we first implemented, I was sitting up in the office when Public Works was still a part of my office. And I was by myself one day and I spent about 4 straight hours just answering complaints about so much money. Boss comes in and my face is like white because it's so frustrating. But I found that since we've switched over and since we got over those initial hiccups and stuff, and we've made some adjustments to those routes and offered to carry out service to people that just can't roll the car out. It's actually improved the whole sanitation refuse collection process. It enables us to also control a little bit more about what's actually been taken. Because when we take stuff like construction debris, well, first of all, we're not supposed to be picking up construction debris. That's supposed to go to the landfill and not be mixed with our regular garbage. Because part of the problem is our county isn't actually a landfill for your household waste. It's a transfer station. So they don't have the capacity there to handle the excess that construction debris causes. And what it does is if you put that in there, they take it out to Harper County or wherever the heck it is. It not only increases the weight, but then it gets to them and they're like, well, we can't take this. This isn't what we're in for. So we're also got problems with that. What do you do with that stuff? We do have, of course, a construction pit at our landfill. And that's where it's supposed to go. So if we catch it, that's what we're saying. It's going to be sent here, it's going to be sent up there. Same thing with our household hazardous waste, like weed killer and other chemicals, paint. We're not supposed to be taking that. The landfill of the county does have a nice setup there too, where they can take those kind of things.
Do they accept paint free? Is that right?
I think they
Yeah,
I thought,
it's
yeah.
just tires, it's like $3.
Yeah,
They do.
and you can drop off any paint for nothing.
I know they take like old appliances.
And the city will take paint if you, let me dry out, that kind of stuff too, because it's, when paint's dry, it's not considered hazardous waste anymore. So, yeah. And that kind of spells back into stormwater too. Well, and sewer. Chemicals aren't supposed to be flushed down even the sewer. It's not, our plant really isn't designed to handle that. Needs to be disposed of at a place like the landfill, or just needs to be used.
Yeah.
So if you buy the 5-gallon bucket of Roundup, you can actually, or don't buy so much. It's something that we're not supposed to take. The sanitation system beyond the poly carts, I know we have a regular system where we rotate out the trucks. One of the things they even looked at was the so-called one-arm bandit, where they would go and not even have to have a guy come move the cart out and just pick it up. Those things kind of expensive. There's some of those trucks I think were running in the $500,000 range. So even with our relatively healthy account balance in the sanitation fund, that is not doable. So we haven't done that, but they do have these flippers on the back of the truck if you've ever seen them.
Yeah.
So they don't have to physically pick up, which has been a nice thing for our workers' comp.
So the efficiency's improved.
I believe efficiency has improved significantly with these carts and with the flipper thing that they have on the truck.
So you talked about the revenue of sanitation, talked about the revenue, sanitation, sewer, you talked about the revenue of stormwater. What about how does the health of sanitation look in terms of revenue?
Or I think we were looking at the possibility of having increased that too. The rates of it. And it wasn't so much about that, it was because the fees at the landfill are going down. And so what it's causing is that fund balance is getting low enough now that the finance director is starting to some of the balance of it. There's the only thing we can do to keep that cost down is to have trash. We live in a throwaway society. We can't do a whole lot about what you buy at store. That has to go up the chain to our manufacturers.
So you mentioned earlier that you were kind of educating the kids on a lot of this stuff. Is that just through the school system? Or how's it?
That's kind of the idea.
I think that's a good idea.
I do too.
I mean, educate that kind of stuff doesn't seem important, but it really is when you get to be an adult.
Now my kids have no problem telling me I'm doing stuff wrong, so.
Yeah.
They love to recycle.
Yeah.
Well, they said, so we gotta do this. Oh,
Reduce trash, waste more.
And while obviously not all of our students are going to end up here in our city, other school districts are doing it too. So we'll bring that here eventually. And I remember even when I was in school, we were already learning about reduce, reuse, recycle.
Yeah.
It was already a big thing.
It started, what, probably in the 90s.
A long time since I was in school.
Longer than I
Didn't go that far.
Oh, I guess we were gonna at least touch on transportation since really. So streets is an interesting issue because streets does not have. We don't have toll booths at the entrance to the city for people to pay tolls. And while that was joked about, I don't remember what brought it up, but it was joked about for a while. We had citizens thinking that we were going to put up toll booths on Cemetery. No. But it is a problem because we don't have a system that would make improvements. We obviously have a number of streets that are in really rough shape, especially our brick streets. They're incredibly expensive. I think at one time we determined a block of a brick street to totally rehab it. It's like $250,000 a block.
That's crazy. One block section or all the way around.
I think there's just one.
Just one street.
One side.
One block length of street.
Yes. So
One street, one block.
very expensive. About the only thing that would work, we've talked about, but there's two things. Franchise fees. So increasing what you pay in a franchise fee when you pay your electric bill. Cable bill, internet bill, all the internet bill, gas. So that's one way it was kind of looked at, kind of punted away. Last year, I think the commission talked about it. The only other one is sales tax. The problem with sales tax is we are paying using our current sales tax quota for the hospital. I think we have a little bit of room, so we could do a half cent, but a half cent doesn't go very far with our current sales tax collections. We just don't generate enough for a half cent. It really needs to be an entire cent. And we can't do that until unless the sales tax comes up enough to pay the hospital bond up sooner.
Maybe a little earlier, but it'll be well past 2030.
So we're kind of stuck in a holding pattern with streets. The only way we get funding to do streets is through grants. Well, we've tried CDBG grants for Summit Street, and we actually got that one. We got $400,000 from it. We got it. Right.
We don't even have that kind of money.
And so we looked at funding through KDOT. They have a program called Cost Share. But we tried it 2 times now.
Struck out twice, I'm applying again next week.
We don't even know why they're doing it.
Oh, they didn't give a reason why they're
They
done?
have no scoring, nothing. It's just whatever they want to pick.
Someone just goes,
And we won't get it because the push falls only 5 million. It was 15, 20.
There's just not enough funding.
Yeah.
At KDOT.
So, yeah.
So we're still hoping to that infrastructure bill that kind of has been floating through Washington that quite frankly is probably a little bloated. But there is funding in it for transportation projects. Now how that funnels down as far as us, who knows? But KDOT has even mentioned that in various calls that I've been a part of. They're still waiting to hear what might come out of Washington, whether it's that really big one or this slightly small. To see what kind of money actually ends up happening. If that goes through, then we'll have funding like we've had in the past with when we did the trail. I mean, that was, I forget what that program was called. The Obama trail.
Did ARR.
Yeah, AR.
Did we, in the past, you guys, we started this talking about costs for brick streets. And I know that in the past, whenever the conversation of brick streets have come up, that it's been this municipal Tums type experience of heartburn about folks and their passion for the brick streets, but now in the context of dollars and dimes, have we ever done anything like just laid side to side, like you throw a number, generic number like cost per block for the brick streets? I know we've also talked about, we typically think of the blacktops like 7th Street as cost per mile. And I think that that's a huge, if you said we're talking about a mile of brick, I guess I'm saying this from a standpoint of it's not just infrastructure need, but it's always this emotional heartburn about, the people with passion for retention of brick streets. And I don't know that we've ever cast it like in the long term, what's the cost of maintaining the integrity of brick streets versus
Well, the one good thing in the maintenance track is we now have a pretty good crew that works in the street department that can actually repair the problem with brick streets. But that's small. It's like they do really good work for like our water guys, and so you're going to get it there. And if there's really bad major sinkholes or something, they are able to repair those too. But so that has driven that cost down.
Somebody just wants to pay them all over.
But yeah,
The street department, we just assume get rid of all brick streets.
Yeah, so this is the goal that was in there the last plan. It just says, try to keep them, but understand they're costly. That's the most useless one.
absolutely. And I don't remember that's the way we ended
What
that.
that got translated into sort of policy as is in the downtown core area, we'll try to keep them. And so we added a bunch of them into the CIP. We were going to do 2 or 3 sections. Here we are 6, 7 years into the CIP. We've done a single one. It's presented every time. And that in the residential neighborhoods, that difference.
That's when that education came up.
The idea was we go into the neighborhood and say, we need to replace this section of street. We will pave it over. If you want to keep it brick, the difference is going to be special assessed to the properties. You can vote on that.
And we may have neighborhoods that are willing to do that just because they want that. A Street might be one of them,
Absolutely.
where there may be support for that.
I thought we got more determined on where the city was going to continue to be responsible for the bricks and where they weren't. And maybe that's where we ought to add this.
Yeah, it just, I mean, that one just is in the downtown.
well, because the passion for the brick streets, it's like I think the discussion was around the downtown area.
Right.
And then you start looking at the peripheral streets and everybody says, yeah, but that one, and but that one, and but that one. And so
Yeah.
it's like the, can I borrow your beaker? Sure, but don't take this one.
Right.
It doesn't matter which one
Yeah.
you look at, that's the one we want to say.
Right.
So I think that's probably.
I think
It does seem to be a little bit, when I look at that, it does seem to be less than what we talked about.
I remember, I
Yeah.
probably got a lot more specific than that, and I think we need to do that.
It's not in the plan, but it's somewhere. I've seen it because I've incorporated it in like the manager's memo.
Yeah.
But I absolutely, if nothing else happens in this plan, need you guys to give us some better work on it.
I want to define that.
That's a really easy goal.
So, yeah, so next month, we'll finish talking about transportation. I kind of want to look at a map so we can count. So here's mine.
Here's what I'm thinking.
I have one of those.
I'll bring this up in the next traffic safety meeting, but I want to really start doing a big public push on transportation in October.
Yep.
Couple angles of that. One is obviously we'll do surveys and stuff, but I was thinking we might even set up like a booth downtown during Guatemala if I can get people to kind of help man it. Where people could come by, get information, leave suggestions, vote in a paper survey. I don't know. I'm still kind of like this, but making that kind of our big public reach out to the community to gather what we need, because we need, I know we're gonna get the input. I can tell you from 5 years of CIP forms, 95% of them are about streets. That's no lack of input, but we gotta focus their input into kind of some overarching, I guess, direction from you guys as to what areas you want that input in, so you can kind of digest it. But keep in mind, we've got the multimodal transportation master plan process going on right now too, so you don't have to do all of it. I'm kind of gonna run the public engagement through you guys, and I'm gonna run the technical stuff through the traffic safety committee and the transit system, since that's what we're paying them for out of the grant. And then come, I'm hoping November, but really we're probably going to December now, start to marry the two together, look at what the public's saying, what the data's saying, and start trying to figure out where the similarities and how can we translate that into goals and actions. So we're probably going to drive into January on the transportation plan, to be honest. They're a little behind on the data analysis phase. So any ideas you have on that or how you want that to go, certainly speak up or get a hold of me or Josh, so we can start designing what that effort's going to look like. There'll probably be at least 2 surveys just on streets and transportation. We're trying to keep the trails and pedestrian stuff separate from the street maintenance.
So in your opinion, what's the priority? Can you like give us a priority list of what you think is most?
That's kind of what we need to work on, is a good.
On streets?
Well, just in general, is water more important than sewer? Is streets more
Well, we
important?
have to do it all.
Okay, I'm sorry, we could even break it down.
I mean, I think the question is answered in the sense of we built this and we barely touched our streets. So I think that we can live with bad streets. People hate them and they complain about them in terms of the car. It's not, they're there, they're available, they can be used. So if our water system goes down, we don't have town. I mean, there's obviously that sort of prioritization has to occur, but ideally we would figure out a way, and it's in the plan.
So there's actually a measurable goal related to water that made it in the headlines.
How'd that?
We did have that.
So it was recommended, find a dedicated source for street and sidewalk maintenance, which is frustrating because at the time the sales tax was still in effect. So they let the sales tax run out and then didn't do anything. Yeah. So I guess one big thing I'd like to come out of this from you guys is, are you going to make a recommendation that we need to look at the sales tax? We can give you the numbers and everything that needs to be done and the cost per mile. And
We can probably figure out how much it has to raise.
And I think that,
I definitely want to see that.
that needs to be built into the final multimodal plan. There's got to be something that is tied to how we're going to do it and not just, well, we need to wish list and priority. Because to be honest, if we're going to do it, then we need to come out next year, guns blazing, probably in the spring or summer, and look at doing a mail ballot on sales tax. Right. So what we're trying to do right now is begin the work of laying the case out there. We're just getting people thinking about it, but at the same time, explain to them why it's so hard for us to do it.
Right.
Some of that has already happened in the budget process. That's a little bit, I think, about why some of the commissioners were talking about raising the millage, was to get people thinking about it. But, what they were looking at would have generated $240,000 a year. Yeah. Doesn't touch it. So the Summit Street project, just from Kansas Radio Lane, that's just resurfacing, is $910,000.
Right.
To go from Radio Lane to Skyline is going to be probably possibly double that or more.
Right.
And that's just Summit. I mean, that's not even dealing with everything else. So sales tax, I think, but I have that estimate right now, could get close to $900,000 a year. Our revenues are up from where they were. We're running in, and we were getting about $840,000. But we could look at what we've been generating and kind of get you.
Well, I don't think we've discovered that pandemic really didn't affect
No,
sales
our
tax.
sales tax revenues going up. Yeah. Which I can only attribute to people staying home but shopping locally more instead of driving to Wichita.
Absolutely.
Because
Everyone's going to Walmart.
yeah, so that was grocery. So, when people talk about cutting the grocery portion, I understand where that comes from. In fact, that was just in the paper, I think, recently, or it was on a Facebook comment. I don't know, someone just put that out.
Yeah, I think it's not really.
And I get it, I understand, I pay my tax on groceries too, but that would probably gut what we receive. We don't have a lot, we have some luxury goods here, but not, it's probably bulk of it is consumables.
Yeah, we are going to need to have money to improve roads if we get the growth that we think is coming.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, there's real growth on the horizon. We're gonna have to be prepared for that. And we can't do it after that happens.
One thing you need to take from this, hopefully, when we start talking land use and planning, is making sure we don't expand too much and keep adding to our burden. We do need to keep a focus on redevelopment and repurposing, which I think we're doing a good job with land bank and some of the other things. But, you know, I think for a long time, this mentality of people running the city was gobble up land and annex. And of course, now we're blocked 3 ways. So that's kind of put the page. All right. We need some folks. It's the mystery of the Oregon duck. Did you see that with the little rubber duck?
Oh, I saw that. It's really, really bad. Anyhow,
Sorry, digress. So, yeah, we need to be talking about funding and just like how that relates to development and growth, and make sure we're not just paving more new streets that we're gonna have to figure out how to fix.
Yeah, right.
Efficient networks.
Right.
Sadly, we do still have to do some of that too,
Oh, yeah.
because of our severe housing shortage. We have to do that.
Right.
Sorry.
Housing shortage.
Well, it's a lot of empty lots. So,
Yeah, but that is something we're working on.
I mean, it's cheaper to build a house in an empty lot. The utilities are already there. So,
We've got a couple of good partners with that. Of course, Habitat turns out one every year. But slowly that's adding. And also, we've got.
what's your applications for, abatement, tax abatement? Is that, have you seen any increase in that? Maybe that could be a measure of.
It's hard to really put a finger on that because some of those applications are just simply rehabs. But we are getting quite a few. That latest change has been definitely making the wheels turn, so to speak, with a number of different developers. Another thing that we've been working on, of course, we're digressing a little bit into housing, is the upper story housing downtown too. We've got several people that are really interested in doing some work down there. So there's definitely still some of that going on. I think downtown is going to see a little bit of a resurgence in the next couple of years.
Yeah, we're still working on the Main Street stuff too, so.
That's another program.
People are recognizing that properties at a much better price, rental or purchase, than any of the commercial properties.
I don't really have much else. I guess I could mention that their transportation stuff briefly. Like in here, it talks about your rail and your bike path. Air, we don't really have a whole lot to do with. That's Featherfield. We're not pushing that anymore than what we're doing. Rail, there has been a lot more talk recently about the Heartland Flyer.
What's that?
It's connection between Dallas and Oklahoma City, and then Oklahoma City and Newton.
Passenger rail.
Amtrak. And so, yeah, it was an Amtrak. And it would have a stop in our city. Probably in our current.
If that infrastructure bill passes as it was written, it's got enough money there, I'm trying to put that around.
Yeah.
The question is how frequent will it be? Because if it's just one stop, it's going to become more of a night thing. Super useful, but even then, having something is better than nothing.
Because even if you could just get connected up to Newton,
Well, it's for Amtrak, I think it's reinvestment and getting culture changed where people will start to consider rails a viable thing. The routes will naturally follow the usage, but it's as close to being a reality as at any time. 10 plus years I've been working on / writing about it, but we're still not there.
City commission, has done all sorts of different things, written
Yeah,
letters.
we're pretty ready to go. They've got a plan together. If it comes in, we'll get the depot rehabilitation going quickly. It's not a hugely expensive project. And the rail's in good shape. It doesn't need massive investment from BNSF at this time. There's a few areas that have been touched, but
With such heavy freight traffic, they have to keep it up.
yeah, it happened. So it's just money out. Yeah. There is some stuff in there about public transportation, and I think that may become more of a little bit of a hot topic since they slashed the Council on Aging's budget. And they're the only ones providing public transportation in the county. I don't know what that all shake it out as, but it may create more need. Something that's not in there that's didn't really even exist at this time. It's the whole Uber and Lyft and all those rideshare services. Anyone can be a taxi driver. It's probably something we should account for. I don't think it's super.
Do we have people do?
I don't know.
I think we have a few that'll come, that'll take people up to Wichita, that kind of thing. But certainly not.
I don't think there's, college kids driving around just make money by means, but.
And there's not a whole lot of money in it for
But there's other stuff too. I've researched there's programs where people will buy new cars and then they'll basically run their own car rental service. There's,
right.
where you could, well, actually, they just basically put it up for rent and someone gets it for however many days and then they turn it back. It's crazy. And they use that money to turn around and pay off the vehicle. So I think you may see more of this stuff.
I think you will. I've seen a lot of that, being in the planning progression, I see a lot of stuff where the thing is, you say you're a factory worker, you drive your car to work and it sits in the parking lot for 8 hours.
Yeah.
And it does nothing but sit there.
Yeah.
And so there's a lot of talk and planning sphere, if you want to call it that, of how you can change that. So maybe that's when somebody rents the car. So they take your car out of that parking lot and they take it down to their car and they bring it back to you where they ship. That's a big shift.
Yeah, but if we're successful in designing a community that's attractive to people, and the hope is I think that we can get people to move back to the Midwest that are tired of paying West Coast prices away.
Yeah, I can see that.
They're going to expect certain things that they've become accustomed to in those areas, and they'll bring it with them. I mean, over time, I think you can see, and that's kind of what the state of Kansas is trying to design its whole transportation and rural prosperity plan around. It's just get people to understand they can live in small towns, enjoy all the benefits of small town life because they can do everything on the web for their job and their telehealth and all of that.
Cox just told us that they're working to increase our.
Yeah. And so, KDOT's been saying this for years, these local council meetings, why they want to build broadband in their projects is so that we have the infrastructure to support that. Right. Well, if it works, then we're going to get a bunch, theoretically Californians and Coloradans want to live here that are going to do that stuff. And so it's something to kind of think about. I'm going to send you guys, I'll share out a document that the Office of Rural Prosperity did along with one of the Kansas nonprofits, can't remember. And it was all about interviewing people in small towns, why they chose to live there, but young people, it was all like under 30. Okay. And it's an interesting read because there's a lot, it's not as simple as you would think. It's not just because they have family or whatever, that's in there, but there's a lot more complexity to the issue. But I think I gave it to the commissioner, I didn't ever hear any feedback or read it, but I think it'd be something you guys might find interesting as you're kind of getting into the goals and actions segment of this. And so I will shoot that out to you. I'll also send you guys a calendar invite. We're going to do the community planning month proclamation on October 5th. Recognize this guy here, but it's also for you guys. We're talking about planning commission and the role of it. You guys also deserve to be recognized for all the work you're putting into this. So if you can attend that event, it's the same night of National Night Out, so we'll keep that moving short. But I am ready to start ramping up the city's awareness. I mean, we've been doing this for a while, but most people don't know But we do need to start getting them thinking about it, getting input that we need, and of course then we'll shift it to more of the public hearings and that sort of phase. So it'll be a hotter topic, I think, in people's minds.
So outside these meetings, is there anything to help?
I think as soon as we figure out a public engagement plan, transportation, just helping make sure people know the opportunities for their voice to be heard. We do need to ramp flash bill back up, and I have the other advice on that a little bit. Just had some of the other projects.
Well, the interesting thing is we're doing major plans for several of our topics of the comp plan. The one, of course, we heard a little bit about last month. That's not so much the city's doing, but there is that plan, there is the outreach going on. We talked about when we were doing parks, how we wanted to have development of several parks plans, like Paris, for example, how to deal with the rest of the Wilson Park plan, and then something for each of them. So we're going to be doing that.
We're starting to work on that. Actually, we've already kind of got the one for Walnut Park fixed now.
Yes, sir.
So if we were going to put it in the context of our measurables, we talked about with other things.
Right.
And since we've ended with the transportation, I mold down into this little paragraph about classifications, arterials, collectors, locals.
Yep.
If we strategically thinking, where would you think we would, where's the biggest bang for the buck up front? Arterial, collector, and local. We need to get into, we need to think about neighborhoods and get into neighborhoods and do some more things.
You almost need a separate
Yeah.
thing for the neighborhoods.
Yeah.
Because the arterial, it gets all the traffic, and the collector gets all the traffic.
The biggest bang for the buck is clearly arterial.
Yeah.
But is it the most necessary? Maybe collectors is what needs to be improved.
Because we functionally have, the one thing that always screams at me is we have one principal traffic way that gets us from south of town to north of town.
Right.
We don't have anything else.
There's several.
And,
Yeah.
but
In practice, you have several.
yeah, when you move around, okay, you get over here to 8th and you can get from 166
All the way to Creekstone.
all the way to the north in the town
Absolutely.
and feed back into.
So could be streets of collectors, so.
Eighth Street
It would make sense.
So we have,
8th Street needs attention, period. And that's what I talked about when I was talking about, this growth that we see happening. It's going to affect 8th Street on both ends.
Especially if they ever do the bypass and they dump it out right there too.
Right.
Yeah, well, that's something we didn't talk about too. If they ever do the bypass, we lose our funding for Madison
And Summit down.
and Summit.
And that rest is on, that's right.
They have the clean program is one of the few ways, or CEQA is one of the few ways we've been able to maintain
Right.
those streets pretty well, and that was, and the other piece of the street funding, so we get some federal fund exchange dollars, it's not a huge amount, but we can use it to our matches. We also get a portion of the state, of the federal gas tax to the state. Well, what KDOT's already sending the alarm about in their plan is gas tax is going to go down as more and more people are driving electric vehicles. So the debate nationally and at the state level is how are they going to capture revenue in a way that, comes from the users and invest back into what they're using.
we're going to be progressive and go to a lot of charging stations around for free.
Actually, KDOT is looking at doing that on several places around the state, on the major highways. But
There's a couple different things they're looking at, and if you want to get into technicalities, I can look about it, show them later, but, there's money for charging stations in the infrastructure bill if it passes, but it's all stuff that it just, if the gas tax goes away, we're real. Because we're getting what little done that we've done. So we've got to figure out another source of funding for sure.
They've been screaming about that for a couple of years now. Have we seen any big decreases in that yet?
No, I mean, the share of vehicles that's electric and hybrid is still, I think, it's 5%, but there's, manufacturers are beginning to switch over, and now there's some mandates potentially that'll come out, and you'll see that accelerate. So it's probably a 10 to 20 year away problem to where it's impactful, but it's something to think ahead about. So, but it's just getting back to what Ian said, if you guys could just help to get the word out when we're really actively looking for that input, because people need to know that we are looking at what they tell us and we're weighing, and I think it has to be part of how you weigh priorities and the measures. I don't know that it has to be, you'll learn this if you've ever part of the CAP. You can't do everything just off of what the public says, unless you can literally get everyone in the public's opinion. And the commissioners and you have to balance that with other things that we tell you and other things you have access to that the common voter doesn't always understand, but it's still important, certainly, to weigh in what they're doing. Right. But everyone wants their street fixed, everyone wants their neighborhood fixed, but we've got 12,000 people, so we still have to figure out some ways of ordering that. I really think more information for you by next month, certainly, that we can really hit the ground running on the transportation stuff. And hopefully, I will try to get a schedule together on how we might tackle the parks and whatever. Wilson Park and Parish Park are kind of their own separate entities at this point with their thing, but I can kind of get the other ones pieced together. So we'll bring maps next time. We can go through the arterials and collectors, but part of the transit system scope is to see if we need to adjust. We're using KDOT's classification system. It's based on what they set the traffic values, but does it totally make sense for our community? That's kind of what they're looking at. But they're also going to look at the nexus of where the vehicles are and where the things are that you need to connect people to, which is retail, food, the schools, major employers, and quality of life amenities like the library and the unusual parks. Yeah, and so they're overlaying that together, and the idea is kind of like where you've got synergy, where you've got a lot of traffic and where you've got a lot of use and connection. Obviously, those need to be priority areas. It's more than just the vehicle counts. It's kind of how you serve the public in those areas.
So you can get stuff like schools added into it too.
I also hope by next month we'll have some census data for you guys to look at. Because right now we still just got the very basic.
Right. We don't know what our population is.
Yeah, we've got the ethnic and stuff, and that's about it.
Yeah.
Not much else, so see what they roll out. Sure, take my time.
Should be the end of this month, is that what they said?
Heard that before. Yeah.
Well, actually, honestly, they've been, the last couple of things they've done, they actually push it out. Like when we got our actual population count that day was moved up like 3 or 4 days.
Yeah.
They're meeting those guidelines. And they're succeeding.
Okay.
Well, the data that we're talking about is actually released. It's just released in a format that's not user-friendly. Easily searchable.
Yeah. Okay. Anything else, guys? I entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Thank you. I have a second.
Second.
Thank you. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.